Welcome to the Generation Free Mississippi, engaging youth to be the generation against tobacco concurrent session. I'm Crystal Kirkland, the Executive Director at the Midlands American Heart Association, and we're proud to be a sponsor of the Leadership Summit for Healthy Communities Plus Youth Edition. At the American Heart Association, we're committed to putting an end to all tobacco and nicotine products. Tobacco users become addicted as kids and want to quit as adults. We're fighting to protect young people from the tobacco industry and helping all tobacco users quit. If we do not address this issue, tobacco will continue to kill nearly 500,000 Americans each year. Youth voice is powerful. The Partnership for Healthy Mississippi has learned this firsthand with their Generation Free youth-led tobacco prevention program for youth. Through social media, they have successfully empowered teens to be vocal about the hazards of tobacco use, making them social media influencers. Creating and growing a successful advocacy campaign for youth means providing them with meaningful and insightful messages that are clear to understand and spoken in a familiar tone. If you build it, they will come. Today's speaker is Sandra Shelson, Executive Director of the Partnership for Healthy Mississippi. I hope you enjoy learning more about strategies to get youth involved in your next campaign.
The Gen Free Mississippi is part of the Partnership for Healthy Mississippi. The partnership started in 1998 as part of the historic tobacco settlement. We were the first state, Mississippi and South Carolina, often we don't get to say we're first in anything real positive. We often have to be first in what you don't want to be first in and last in what you would prefer to be first in. But we did settle first, and we were able to get a youth program as a result of that settlement. So as we were getting started, we had all the behavioral scientists come together, and they, we were able to figure out that how you message to youth is incredibly important if you're going to change the culture of health. And that's our goal, is to change the culture of health as it related to tobacco use at the time. We had very high youth rate at the time. And we have to start with the younger folks because, as you all know, it is so much easier to start a good habit than it is to break a bad habit. So I'm going to go through these slides. This presentation, when we first gave it to be presented, it's based on last year's program. So there have been some changes, and I will indicate those as we go along. So as I was saying about the importance of youth, no offense to Mrs. Reagan, but back in the day when we thought we could cure all the ills by teaching our kids to just say no, if that were the case, then we would have no problems whatsoever, because we would have just said no repeatedly and things would be great. But we know that that's not the case. And so as I was mentioning about the behavioral science, the way it was designed is for the two aspects, or the age of reason, and those are your youngest learners. And the partnership has programs starting at preschool. So, your K through 6 is the age of reason. They understand if this, then that, the consequences, and they love to teach up. Then when you get to be a preteen and teenager, it's the age of rebellion. So they want to push back against authority. If you tell them anything is an adult behavior, then you're just inciting them to try it out. And many of you may remember the tobacco companies would present ads, and they were patting themselves on the back, saying, "Look at us, we're great people. We have, we're doing this prevention aspect," and it did not. It was not intended that way. I mean, their intent was to engage these kids in that adult behavior perspective. The The other thing too that was very different back then is that in order to be seen, you had to invest the big bucks. You had to invest the big bucks to do the television, the radio ads, and you had production costs, you had the placement costs, either that or you had a PSA. And quite frankly, in the late 90s, early 2000s, a PSA would be put on it at a time when the kids weren't watching it. So, so that was a big part of our budget in the early days, was trying to create these meaningful media campaigns and then tie it back into the work we were doing in schools, so that if a kid goes to school, they've heard about our program. If they go to Vacation Bible School, if they turn on the radio, if they are their billboards, all of that was interwoven so that they saw the message over and over again. And quite frankly, with budget cuts and all of that, I am happy to see that trend have gone away. So the way that we set the program up is that, the youth want to hear from the youth. They do not want to hear from the adults in the room. So we have our youth, and from the beginning, we've had youth boards. We've had street marketers. These are, usually college-age kids that we would have come in. And as you see down here, these are all the different ways that you can engage the youth. Very much peer-to-peer. As I said, they do not like to hear from us. Our program has engaged, I told you, the early learners, the middle school and high school, that's Gen Free. And then we've also had Gen Free U, because especially when the age was raised to 21, it was important to start even, making sure that these kids understood that, that this was no longer a rite of passion. I turned 18, I can smoke on the college campus. So all of that was, taken into consideration. As I said before, the things are a little bit different, and we'll hit COVID and its point. Next slide, please. So one of the biggest keys, and I think this really helps to engage kids, is advocacy. We have wanted to make sure that our kids can be self-advocates, not only for ways to make the world a better place, but also how to advocate for themselves, whether it's at school, whether, quite frankly, if it's in a family setting, if it's among their peers. How do we go about doing that? Next slide, please. So our program has tried to be we have in-school sponsors, and really that sponsor is more of a point of contact for us than that truly engaged in the program, because that would defeat the purpose of it being youth-led. And so the sponsor is there to just kind of be the traffic cop for what these kids are doing. We give these kids college scholarships and or stipends. We make sure that they sign a contract so that they understand that, this is something for them to be, it's work. It can be fun work, but it's an obligation. And we have tried to make sure that they have all the input. It's not a top-down approach as much as it's a bottom-up. And even nowadays, I mentioned the fact that things have changed so much from the TV, radio. You had TV and radio, and then that went away. You started having kids that, remote controlled, DVR'd, no listen to radio, download music. And now, we went to Facebook. Well, as soon as all of the grown-ups figured out Facebook, all the kids got off of it, and they went, and you can advance the slide too, please. They went, to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And now, by the time the adults in the room have figured out the trend, is no longer a trend. So, what used to be trends for multiple years, we're lucky if we've identified it by the time it's changed. And so many of you may be familiar with TikTok, and I'll get to that in just a minute. Now, a couple of suggestions for you. As I said, this particular program from last year, we were in 4 schools. We also had a control school so that we could do pre and post testing. And these schools were diverse, and they were diverse in economics, they were diverse in race, and they were in ethnic, gender, geography. And as I said, you know, when it's about advocacy, the diversity is going to be very meaningful. Now, I know I looked up that South Carolina does not have a statewide smoke-free law, nor does Mississippi, so we're very similar, and neither of us have preemption. I couldn't find how many municipalities that you guys have that have passed ordinances, but you know, we have about 180 municipalities, and I think we're up to about 6 counties that have passed comprehensive smoke-free ordinances, but we're still only about just over, it's not even half of the state being protected by that. And I know that, like I said, South Carolina is in the same situation. These young people are some of your best advocates for trying to change those municipal ordinances or those county ordinances. That's why it's so important that when we bring them in, we've identified them, they go through an interview process. We give them the training that they need. We educate them not only on the tobacco aspect of it, but we also add, advocacy training, how to write a letter to your legislator, what is the legislative process, how to engage a lawmaker. And it's not lobbying, because all they're doing is educating. You know, we're a nonprofit. We get a lot of funding from the state government. So, we're forbidden from, giving money to candidates or direct lobbying, but we do give those kids the tools that they need, that they can feel confident contacting their legislators. Now, one thing I'll tell you, as I said, that strategically looking at where you're going to recruit from, if you are looking at a law that you would like the legislature to be involved in, make sure as much as possible that you are strategic in where you recruit your kids from. And by that, I mean, if the Speaker of the House is from a particular area and that person has a lot of power, it may be a good place to recruit from, because one thing about legislators particularly, but all local politicians, is they read the little newspapers, and they look at the who spoke at Rotary and who got the scholarship from the DAR. They look at that sort of thing. So it's very important to try to be in a nice way in the face of these lawmakers. Next slide, please. With vaping, and from when we got started with cigarette use, it was the demographics of the smoker. It was primarily the high school males more than females at the time in 1998, 99. The white more than the African American. But all of that was subject to change, and the targeted marketing, and so we had to be on our toes and responsive to what the data showed, the YRBS or the YTS every year. And so you have to be able to make changes as they come up. So you can hit the next slide too, so the other side will bring that. So it's really important who you're looking at, and the next one, because it's a full page. So the presentations that these youth are creating, when you're trying to give them the information, you need to make sure that it is not being preachy. It's not another day sitting in a classroom. It needs to be hands-on, the more interactive. If you look to these photos, at the top, the ones with the umbrella hats, we went to that school and these kids were pulled up and they had to put their hands in these buckets. And these were all kinds of different items that were related to a chemical that was found in vaping. For example, and the one that everybody ooped out at was we had syrup. And, that's to be like the tar in your lungs. And so they can't see what it is and they have to try to kind of guess. We had popcorn for popcorn lung. We had a bucket with nothing but water in it because everybody thinks that's all that's in vape. So, it was fun for them. And the ones that participated, they got the fun little umbrella hats. These two young men at the bottom, the one with the tie, he was a champion swimmer, went to college this year on a scholarship, a swimming scholarship. And when we were at their school, they came up and they said, we used to be vapors, but because it was impeding my speed, it was impeding my breathing when I was swimming, I had to quit. Well, they agreed to be spokespeople for us. And, everybody wants to be a cool kid. And in every school, in every community, cool can be all kinds of different things. It can be the one with the straight A's. It can be the best athlete. It can be the head cheerleader. It can be the best debater in the state. All of those things. And so when you're looking at engaging these kids, you need to make sure that you're engaging not only the top student, because they're the ones who are going to sign up, they want to build the resumes, but you also want to make sure that you're engaging some of the others because they are just as likely to vape. And as I was saying, when we got started with the demographics with tobacco, it reminded me when the vaping epidemic started raising its ugly head, that we had some of the same trends. It was an expensive habit. It was in your more suburban, more affluent areas to begin with. But now all of that, just like with tobacco, it's all changed. And so you've got to be able to be responsive. Okay, so the next slide, please. Okay, well, our good friend in the middle of our grant year hit us, COVID, and we had, obviously the in-person events that we were planning, the in-person presentations in schools, all of that had to be rethought. So we started making, really focusing even more on social media than we had before. And, the social media in the early days, people would say, when we would say we've got to be more text messaging and we've got to be more on social media. Well, these kids live in the rural Mississippi and they don't have access to the phone or the, whatever. And now that's not the case. Everybody, with the exception of my dad, who still has a flip phone, has a smartphone, and they can they keep up with their friends that way. They keep up with their world that way. Their entire world is in the palm of their hands. I have a focus group of 2 at home. Well, they're not at home now; they're in college. But and I have a 19-year-old and a 25-year-old, and I have over and I've been at the partnership for 17 years, so I've really seen that trend of moving more to the social media and the whole world being in the palm of your hand. First off, so as I said earlier, they started with the Facebook. Then they moved when the grown-ups started Facebook. They got into Instagram and Snapchat, and then TikTok. So I'll give you an anecdote. Focus group to my son, 19. Well, at the time he was 18. His freshman year got interrupted. He goes to the University of Virginia, and it got interrupted. He comes home and he said, "Mom, I think I'm a try to be TikTok famous." And I said, "Tick what?" I had no idea what he was talking about. And sure enough, this kid, he starts making these funny TikTok videos. So of course, I have to watch them, it helps with his viewers. And not only did this kid, I mean, he had well over 1 million plus likes and over 100,000 followers. And people, companies like Dunkin' Donuts and other organizations started sending him gear. So that just tells you the power of that marketing. They wanted him to be on his TikTok showing this or using something to promote it. And now TikTok, again, all the grown-ups got on it. I think because its logarithm allows for what kind of content you're looking at. The adults are looking at the cat videos and the old people dancing, and the kids are doing their own thing. So that they may not be exiting quite as fast as in the past, but podcasts have now, YouTube, everything's on YouTube. So, keeping up. So if you don't have the personal bandwidth for that, then, talking to young people. When you go in Walmart, or when you go somewhere, look around and see what everybody is, what the kids are using, what they're doing, what they're wearing, what they're listening to. It's very important to do that. And because we were attuned, we started seeing a huge uptick in our followers on social media and on Instagram. And because the whole world's right here, these kids can produce a video. They can take a theme and do it themselves and send it to you. It doesn't have any production cost. Next screen, please. Okay, so as I was saying, our dear friend COVID hit, and we all got topsy-turvy. Everything is in a lot of cases, it's still topsy-turvy. We had to think outside the box. We had to figure out how to try to continue to message to these kids at the time when their worlds were turned upside down, and all of the things that you were not, you think of as a rite of passage, those things didn't happen. Proms didn't happen. Graduations didn't happen. So things like tobacco prevention and vaping prevention, that's sure far down on their radar. They're trying to get through the day. So how do you move forward? Next slide, please. So as we, started doing looking at it, what can we do? And as I said, these rites of passage not being available, for in person, how can we replicate that? And one thing I'm going to say, and I may repeat it because I think it really does bear repeating, and that is while all the attention became on COVID, and rightfully so. I mean, this was an epidemic. It was killing people. It was, it was awful. Everything that was happening before COVID entered our mainstream conversation, all of those problems still exist. The vaping epidemic, the opioid crisis, all of it. It's still there. It's just kind of like the groundhog. It's just a little underground. But as we're starting to come out from COVID, that is going to be the next, it's going to have exacerbated, I predict. And even if, one of the things that's happened because of COVID, the gold star evaluations that most of us rely on, such as the YTS and the RBS, the Youth Tobacco Survey, the Youth Behavioral Risk Survey, those things couldn't take place this year because you couldn't get into the schools to do them. So our data is going to be a little skewed, at least probably for the next year or two. But anecdotally, I have noticed so many more people smoking cigarettes. And as you know, that just because a kid starts vaping, that does not mean that they're going to be immune from switching to tobacco. So, we're going to have some major concerns going forward in all of those areas. And, we will continue to have this conversation about COVID. I looked up the vaccination rates for South Carolina. Mississippi, depending on which study you look at, we're either 50th or 49th. Thank you, Alabama. And then South Carolina, well, we're at 28.5%. And this was 9 days ago, vaccination rate. South Carolina is 36.3, and the national average is 44.6. So, both of our states are below the average. So these things are going to continue to be concerns as we go forward. Again, my personal story, my daughter, who just finished at her law school at the University of Illinois, which is where I went to law school. So, it was big, mom moment. They didn't have in-person graduation for the second year in a row. So, the things that you thought were going to have been back to normal over a year ago, we're still struggling with it. So it's very important for us to figure out how to stay on the balls of our feet when we're doing this kind of work. And there's some things that may not ever go back. From the public health world, for me, working in a nonprofit arena, sending people to conferences, it takes a lot of money. And I think a lot of foundations and grants are not going to provide it anymore because they have seen that there is an alternative where you can still get the information, but you don't have to leave the comfort of your own office, or even, change out of your pajamas if you don't want to. So those kinds of things may not change, but we need to keep in mind the struggles that our kids are having as these things change and stay changed. Next slide, please. So, will you play this? This is let me just set this. This young lady used to be on our statewide youth advisory board, and she was a youth advocate of the year for the tobacco-free kids. So we started taking a lot of our young people, and when we were trying to address not only vaping, but also throw in there, and this was before all the vaccines were available, the social distancing, the mask wearing, and all of that. So go ahead and play the video.
Hey everyone, it's Bryce Moore here.
And I'm Gabby Kennedy, and in 2018, I was the Yaya from Mississippi.
In 2016, I was named the National Youth Advocate of the Year by the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids.
And even though that was a few years ago, my passion for fighting against the dangers of tobacco
and vaping hasn't changed.
May 31st is World No Tobacco Day, and we take that pretty seriously.
Whether you start on May 31st, June 5th, or November 15th,
it's never too late to quit, and your future self will thank you later.
Trust me. Save your money, save your lungs,
and save your immune system. Our challenge for you is to take one day and not use any tobacco products, period.
Period. That means no vaping,
no cigars,
no hookah,
and yep, no cigarettes.
We know it's gonna be hard to break the habit, but we believe in you, and we're here to help.
DM us on Instagram for tips and reach out to your friends and family for support. Trust us, they're going to be so proud of you for breaking a deadly habit.
Just like we will be. We can do this, Mississippi.
And more importantly, you can do this.
One day, no tobacco.
No tobacco.
We are cheering you on.
We're cheering you on.
For more information,
follow us on our social media, or you can visit genfreems.com.
Okay, these were some of the events that we did post-COVID. So the mindfulness and meditation, we had one of our sponsors at Oxford High School who was a certified yoga instructor. So she did an hour of yoga, so that, we talked about the stress of all of this is helping these kids figure out ways to deal with their stress that's not tobacco or vaping related. The one right down below it, we did a virtual prom, and oh, it was so cute. We decorated the office. We had the balloons, and we had two very dynamic people hosting it, and we encouraged everyone to send in a song for the playlist. And then we also had them cut out dates, like who is your dream date, whether it was, let's see, in my case, probably Brad Pitt, that kind of thing. So anyway, and they show off and tell who their date was, and that was cool. The Break the Habit, that's one of our brands, if you will. And the whole idea with Break the Habit is to break the device, to break the habit. So what we did in this one was we had our two dynamic young people dressed up in, look like sort of Bob the Builder, only in reverse. They had the Wreck-It Ralph, that cartoon Wreck-It Ralph. They were dressed up like that with hammers and goggles, and they were breaking all of this stuff. And they had live feed and interaction with the kids. And then on this other event, the Rap Challenge, we have a former Gen Free Mississippi board member who is in Atlanta now, and he's a rapper. So he came on, and we would toss out words to him that were related to tobacco prevention, vaping type words, and he would make raps around them. So next slide, please. And this is another ad.
Hey, I'm Spencer. We've seen this before, right? You're at a party and one of your friends is trying to convince you to try their new little device. They say it'll give you a buzz or chill you out, but in reality, it just sets you up for a lifetime of addiction. A Puff Bar Bless like this has the same level of nicotine as 2 whole packs of cigarettes. And if you didn't know, nicotine is the chemical that keeps you addicted. Even worse, they use flavors like guava and pina colada to market to us and make it seem like these products aren't that big a deal, when in fact, they really are. So next time someone offers you a hit, send them our way and we'll teach them how to quit. To quit today, visit us on social or genfreems.com.
That young man, Spencer, he has been part of our Gen Free U. He's a college student, and he's a youth leader. He's done incredible stuff. So he's been a really good guy. And a tremendous asset to be able to utilize his leadership and his influence. It's all about the social influence these days. Next slide, please. So as I was saying before, we're here, trying to help them. So, since I don't really know who all is watching it and the level of tobacco knowledge, vaping knowledge that you have, one of the things I think that's been the most disturbing to me for having been doing this for so long is back in the day, if you were going to smoke a cigarette and you were a high school student, you had to sneak out, you had to smoke the cigarette, you had to get rid of the butt, you had to figure out how to disguise the way because you smelled like a chimney. And then if you wanted to smoke a pack of cigarettes, you had to repeat that process 20 times. Well, as y'all know, when vaping came around, one vape pod had as much nicotine in it as an entire pack of cigarettes. And you could vape in the classroom and no one would even know that you were doing it. A case in point, about 3 years ago, we were in a classroom, we were doing a presentation, and the teacher was in the room with us, and there was a kid in the back of the room, and he was vaping. I mean, the fact that, it's nefarious that you've got all this vapeware and ways to disguise letting the insignificant vape escape. It's not like those cars where it looks like they're in a car, in a cloud. Now it's very limited. So, the point being is that for cessation purposes, these kids that have this strong vaping habit are more addicted than the previous generations with tobacco. And as I stated earlier, there's a direct nexus between strong vaping habits moving on to using traditional tobacco products. So we have to help as much as we can with them stepping down, because that level of nicotine in an adult is hard, but can you imagine these young folks? Another thing is that they seem to be doing this a lot earlier. When surveyed about 2 years ago, most of them said the first time they tried it, it was on a friend's before they actually started buying them themselves. As you also know, all the flavors, Juul was a big dog there for a while because of all the flavors, the flavor ban, yay, but there was a big loophole, and it wasn't big enough loophole you could drive a truck through, because all of those one and done, the single use devices, they're exempt. So that's an advocacy issue for all of us to try to embrace, because unicorn poop is certainly not a flavor that a 40-year-old who's trying to quit smoking is going to turn to. Fruit Loops, things like that. So that they are definitely targeting our young people.
Hey there, my name is Mary Margaret Heyer, your Miss Mississippi. While we are in confusing times, we are Mississippians, and we are the best at reaching out to a neighbor with a helping hand. We have an opportunity here to social distance and to socially connect. Reach out to a friend who you haven't talked to in a while, or write a letter to an elderly neighbor. I know it will brighten their day. We have to do everything in our power to be wise and stay safe during the coronavirus. So wash your hands for 20 seconds, practice social distancing, and stay away from any product that will compromise your immune system and make it weaker. The products I'm talking about are vaping devices, such as a Juul or a Puff Bar. These devices are deadly nicotine addiction starters, and something I want every Mississippian to stay away from. They are not filled with harmless water vapor, but a toxic aerosol that can affect the person who vapes as well as the people around them. With chemicals like formaldehyde, the chemical used to preserve dead bodies, acetone, the chemical found in nail polish remover, and benzene, the chemical found in gasoline, these products are dangerous and something we need to take seriously. We can do this. We will get through this, but we have to do it together. Take this time to talk to your friends and loved ones about the dangers of vaping and how they can break the habit. For tips on how to quit and to learn more about tobacco and vaping prevention in Mississippi, visit Generation Free on social or visit genfreems.com. Be safe and don't vape, Mississippi. Love, Mary Margaret.
And that's another area, her platform was vaping prevention. So she actually reached out to us. And even though she's Miss Mississippi 2019, because they did not do a pageant last year, she represented us, or something like that. It was she had a longer run than normal. But anyway, she is somebody, especially the younger middle school girls and guys, look up to. So that was very nice that she was able to do that with us. Next slide, please. All right, so a couple of other things that we did. These are some of the TikTok, there was a lot of meme. So a lot of these that are memes from different TikToks that were done. The one up here where you've got the group of kids with their masks, that was a really fun event. It was a drive-in movie event, and we were able to have information that was given to them before the movie. The drive-in movie was something that was sponsored by the school. We tried to make sure that where we could, we were able to provide meaningful information to these kids. The guy there with the Walk of Champions, that's on the Ole Miss campus, and whether it's the Mississippi State campus or whether it's University of Southern Mississippi, Jackson State with our new Deion Sanders rah-rah coach, you've got opportunities there to try to tap in. But these TikTok memes, very important. That kids like to see themselves, their friends like to see their, it's a lot of sharing going on. It was one of the biggest ways we were able to increase our social media, is because they would say, hey, you need to see my video on TikTok, or you need to see this cool thing that I got to do. And that just helps exponentially grow your footprint, your social media footprint. One thing I do want to say right here, because we're getting close to the end, is in public health, all of the dots are connected. And by that, I mean, if you've got, for so long, so many of us, the funding sources, the program sources, they're all in silos. You know, you deal with the particular silo. And in a lot of cases, if it's something associated with a chronic disease, most of the silo is meant to find treatment options, resources for those who have the chronic illness. But, you know, we need to keep swimming upstream. And by that, I mean, most things in public health can be prevented. And we all know that with vaping and tobacco usage, those things are obviously, prevention pays huge dividends. But the vaping and the tobacco use, there are a lot of marginalized kids who are going to be more likely to use products like that. They're going to be more depressed. I mean, there's so much linkage. And as I said, it was putting gasoline on the fire when COVID came in, especially if you had an underlying mental health issue. So one of the things that we're going to be doing going forward is tying all of this together, all of it. So much, trying to do a better job of tying it all together. And in Mississippi, and kind of throughout the South, unfortunately, but particularly Mississippi, we have mental health has been stigmatized. And, you know, we went through, before COVID, we had a pretty, in this area where I am, and I'm in Jackson, we had a rash of teenage suicides. It was just traumatic and tragic. But we need to do a better job of informing our youth on what does depression look like, what does it feel like, how to know the warning signs, educating parents more. And I'm saying all of that because I don't want anybody to not see how all of these things impact you, no matter what particular thing that you're working on. I was asked to serve on the Alzheimer's statewide board, and I don't know anything about that. I know prevention, and because prevention is tied to these good behaviors and these good health outcomes, it is tied to Alzheimer's prevention in a lot of ways. There are some behavioral things that you can do when you're much younger that can help with that. So I'm gonna get off that soapbox, but my point being is, let's all think about how we're interrelated and how we all work together. We've got one more video. Would you show that one real quick, please?
My name is Bradford Patton, and I play at Tougaloo College. I've been playing baseball all my life, since I was 6 years old. My dad, his first time, he gave me a ball and he told me to throw it to him, and he said, I knew this was your sport. I played other sports since I was little, football, soccer, and basketball, but when I got to high school, it's my senior year, I just decided to go with baseball. I've never used tobacco products before because baseball is important to my game. If I go out on the field and I'm not mentally there, the game will catch you by surprise. Baseball, it teaches you life lessons, and it teaches you mentally how to prepare yourself in life. People, or some of my teammates, have tried to get me to use tobacco over the years, but to be honest, I just never wanted to try it because it always had them feeling down on themselves every time they do something wrong or not thinking right on the field, and it causes us to lose games and stuff. And sometimes they even be out of breath, and you know, you need all the energy you need on the field. So it's part of the reason why I just never go for it. I know you see the majors, I know you see everybody using dip or tobacco. It's a habit they have, but when you get that habit, you're not gonna be able to break it. But if you don't try it, you're not gonna have that habit. You're gonna have the will to succeed without tobacco products. As an example of a college athlete myself, I just want to encourage all the young athletes that's coming up to not use tobacco products. It can really hurt you. A lot of athletes today that are supposed to go to the majors get in trouble with drugs all the time, and they don't make it there. So if you want to make it there and it's your dream, you got to try to lay off the tobacco products or just don't do it at all.
As I'm wrapping up here, a couple of things I'd like to leave you with. Just like that young man, you don't need to always have to have some world famous, overpaid or well-paid celebrity. If you're dealing with your local celebrities, those are going to be kids like him. They're going to be the social media influencers that are local. If you do your job, you can find out who they are. You can reach out to them, do your homework, and make sure that they're not using vaping devices or other bad habits in their media posts. But that's something that you could you can look at. Everybody, doesn't matter how old you are, everybody wants to be the cool kid, as I said earlier, and everybody's definition of a cool kid is a little bit different. Find your social influencers and and stick with them. I hope that this has been a little bit helpful for you guys. And I really apologize for the technical difficulties earlier. But y'all can reach out to me. I know we're going to take questions, but we have been doing this for a long time. It is absolutely a great program. And the work that we're all doing is so very, very important to the future of our states and our country. Last thing I'm going to leave you with, because it just came to my attention that President Biden is about to sign the Juneteenth federal holiday, and it will go into effect immediately. The reason that's I mentioned that is because we pay attention to days that are important, whether it's Flag Day, whether it's Mother's Day, Father's Day, anything like that. Pay attention, because it gives you another excuse, another reason, another opportunity to put a social message out there or to engage youth in something around that, because one person may not care about it, but another will.
That was a really good presentation, Sandra. Thank you so much. Let me see. We don't have any questions posted in the Q&A right now. Please, if anybody has any questions, post them there or even in the chat. I want to comment something I noticed in your presentation, particularly in all of the videos. I love how, and you're giving me an idea, I love how the kids end it with, they mention, they don't say generation free Facebook, it's visit us on generation free social. And then they say the web address. I think that is, I like that a lot. That's really neat and catchy.
Well, and not all of those kids belong to our youth advisory board, but the ones that do, and as I prefaced some of the earlier comments, they receive college scholarships and or stipends. And in that contract, it says you will do X number of posts. Obviously we can help with the theme and the content, but that's part of the training, is training them to stay on brand, to stay on message.
Question about the stipends and the scholarships. How do you fund those opportunities?
How do I fund them? Well, most of the time, whatever grant that we receive, when we write the grant application, we write it into that, because nobody does anything for nothing anymore. And they may think, but y'all all know, if you deal with volunteers, your heart can be in it, but if it's not compensated, a lot of times it's just real easy to roll over on a Saturday morning and not get out there and go pick up trash. So the more obligation, and that's another reason that those early lessons of I sign my name to this, this is my obligation, these are my responsibilities, and it's all part of that ongoing building better citizens. We're building advocates, we're building prevention advocates, but we're also hopefully building better Mississippians, better citizens.
Okay. Do you mind sharing how much the stipends are?
It depends on the funding source. They range I would say our average has been $1,000, but let me preface that. Let's say that, part of your obligation is that you have to be on the monthly call. And you about 2/3 of the way through, you stop. Well, you're not going to get the whole $1,000. It's going to be a sliding scale as to how much of the scope of work or the contractual obligations you fulfilled. But on average, and what we've done in the past for these high school students, we have the college affordability plan. We would have their parents send us their information, and if they didn't have an account, we had them set up an account and we would deposit it in. Now, I'm backtracking from that a little bit as we're going forward, because I'm trying to embrace more of the non-traditional youth. And so not everybody is going to go to college. Not everybody's going to go to community college. I want to embrace those who are going straight to cosmetology school, or those who are learning to be truck drivers. So we're moving away from the college scholarship right now and more towards stipends. But it will be the same concept of a sliding scale. You did 80% of the work, you'll get 80% of the money.
Okay, that seems fair. Okay, well, those are all the questions that we had, Sandra. Thank you so much. It really was a great presentation. You all are doing some fantastic work over there. And if any of our attendees have specific questions that you would like to ask Sandra, her contact information was at the end of the presentation.